Welcome to Song Album Career. I'm Chris Bragg, and that is David Thurmaier. And today we'll be talking about a colossal 1990s smash hit for Sinead O'Connor, written by Prince. And that's the song, of course, Nothing Compares to You.
And don't forget that the 2 is a number, and it's you, the letter.
Yes, that's right. As all Prince songs ever written, he does a little shorthand for us there. Of course, he'd eventually even shorthand his name.
Right, right.
Yeah, big smash hit, number one for 4 weeks. It was such a big hit for Sinead O'Connor that Prince started playing it live in his shows. Where do we begin with this one? Do you want to talk about the Sinead O'Connor version first? Or
Yeah, I think we
Prince?
should, because that's the one that we know. That's the one that came out and was the big hit. The Prince one, his version didn't come out until after he died, wasn't it? I think it was.
Yeah, the first demo recording of it came out shortly after he died. So we'll talk about that one. We'll talk about the Prince version. In fact, the very first release of this was a Prince group
Yeah.
called The Family, which sort of went completely unnoticed. But to the Sinead O'Connor version, that one was on her album I Do Not Want What I Haven't Got.
Yeah.
A strange song musically, Dave, that it's mostly keyboard whole notes.
Yeah. It's very sparse. I think this is in fact, I was looking at some of the reviews of Sinead's version, which, as you said, was a major hit. Number one, if you look at the charts, it was number one almost everywhere. It's very sparse musically. There's very few credits on the personnel for playing it. I think to me what stands out, and the song, some of the critics didn't even like the song. They said it's too simple for Prince. It's really a vocal extravaganza for Sinead O'Connor. It's really a chance for her to show off her very interesting, quirky voice in lots of ways, and kind of feeling the emotion of the song, especially in the coda, which goes on for a couple minutes.
Yeah, that stood out to me, of course, that it's just holding these hold notes and not that interesting musically. So it's just like clearing the way, I think, clearing the decks for her vocals to shine on it. Her version highlights different musical things than the Prince version does, and particularly there's a part of the melody right at the end, right before it goes into the chorus, that she's saying,
Oh yeah.
compared. That's not in any of the Prince versions. Many cover versions don't have that either. It's sort of a Sinead vocal flourish just for her version.
There are a couple of like musical things like that. There's the other lick that is in all of the songs, the oh,
Yeah.
you hear that a lot.
In the Prince version, there's a different section where it's like, it's been 7 hours, 14 days since you went on love away. And then there's this dun 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 dun. And that one's really highlighted in the live version that was released on Prince Hits. And that was also a super duper highlighted in the family version. It's almost like that's the main part of the song that you're going to leave there remembering that part more than any other. But it's not even, I think, in the Sinead O'Connor version at all.
No, very subdued.
Very
Yeah.
subdued, very subtle. So yeah, so without a lot to talk about musically, we kind of have to turn our attention to the lyrics. And I do think the lyrics are interesting. Of course, it's a sad breakup song, but it's a very specific longing, and it's that part of life where you're still holding on to something so much that you're still counting literally the hours and days since you broke up,
Yeah.
and you don't think you can ever get over it. So
Is this a jilted lover or an abandoned lover or just a sad lover, or all of them? I don't know.
yeah, I think it's definitely an abandoned lover. You took your love away.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, I'm never gonna get over it.
No, it's very sad, and I was
Yeah.
struck by I'm not a very huge familiar. I'm not a huge fan or have a lot of familiarity with Prince's songwriting, apart from the hits. But it seems very conversational. It's very matter of fact. There's not a lot of, it's not Dylan-esque wordplay. It's just very, this is how I'm feeling, and the directness.
Yeah, and so so much so, he tells you a little story about going to the
Oh,
doctor.
right, right.
Dave, what kind of doctor prescription is girl? You better try to have more fun, no matter what you do. That's his whole prescription. That's that
Yeah.
doctor.
Quack.
Is this a real doctor or a psychiatrist?
Yeah, go have some fun.
Kind of odd, yeah.
Yeah.
It's very dark, though. All the flowers you planted all died.
Yeah. My question with this song is, like I said, the critics were kind of split. Some said it sounded like a dirge. It is, especially I think Prince's version's even slower. It's like the one that came out later was very slow. But it is a dirge. So how much of it do you think was Sinead O'Connor's personality and her, shall we say, eccentricities? And I remember the ripping up the photo of the Pope on Saturday Night Live and her kind of outrageous behavior. How much of that do you think played into the success, or was that after? I can't remember.
Well, the ripping up the Pope was definitely after. I want to say some stuff about all of that. So she had a few hits before this that were smaller hits that were a little more like defiant kind of seeming, and a lot of her performance and her shaving her head bald and all that is a sort of a pushback of defiance against societal norms. Regular people probably didn't like the bald head and thought she was strange or scary. Then, with that reputation from the public, to go from that to singing this sad love song about losing love, and famously in the video, of course, it's mostly just her face.
Yeah.
And a lot
Yeah,
of
with the
long
tears.
shots of her walking around. It really stood out to me, and it was like, oh, maybe she's not so like just angry, and I think it touched people, and someone who had seemed sort of
Cold and
yeah,
yeah,
wasn't that
aggressive.
way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
there's a tremendously great Showtime documentary called Nothing Compares. Came out in 2002 about Sinead O'Connor, and I would recommend everybody check it out. It kind of recontextualizes her whole career for you and explains the ripping up the Pope and the backlash towards her afterwards, and gets into what fueled all of that from her youth. There's a lot to talk about her youth and why that led to that moment. But you see, yeah, of course, you see all the backlash and people shouting her down at the Bob Dylan concert and all of that. So check that documentary out. I loved it. There's a phenomenal live version of this out there. I'd suggest everybody also go seek out from Chile from October 13th, 1990. It's the Amnesty International concert. And she just really kills it. There's that middle section where there's no solo in the whole middle section, It's just the chords. But in the live version, she does one big whole note that lasts, well, it's more than a whole note. It lasts probably 12 bars. And
Like a Whitney Houston type note on
it's sort of like more of a scream. It's more of a scream than
yeah.
anything, but it's so fantastic. So check that one out.
Yeah.
And I'd also point to a 2019 version that's on the Late Late Show. That's the Irish Late Late Show. Fantastic version, subdued. This time it's sung as a tribute to Prince with an orchestra, and it just takes a completely different vibe.
Oh, wow.
And she nails that one too. So yeah, some great live performances are available out there from Sinead O'Connor. Yeah, I definitely say, whenever you think of the ripping up the Pope thing, at least give it a chance to that, checking out that documentary that's on Showtime. So I think you'll gain some new respect for her. In her career, and some of her early works they play in that documentary are great. They didn't play the song in the documentary Nothing Compares to You because apparently the Prince estate wouldn't give them the rights.
I read a bunch of stuff about how it said, did Prince and Sinead O'Connor get along? And basically the answer is no, that he was kind of annoyed that the song, I mean, he was happy, I'm sure, to get the royalties, but He didn't like that it was so popular, and that's like you said, he started playing it. And then I saw that he challenged her to a pillow fight at one point, which I don't think she took him up on, but apparently there was not great relationship between Sinead and Prince. So
Yeah, well,
that explains the fact that
I
they're still not able to use the song.
think there's a few stories of Prince and someone else,
Yes,
Michael
he might.
Jackson, if they were a celebrity level, competition for him. I
Yeah,
think there was sort of like feeling like he is better
yeah,
and way more talented than you are. So why are you getting the attention, not me?
right, right,
So-
exactly.
well, let's move on to Prince and the Prince version. Well, there's that first recording by Prince, and that's a pretty simple version.
Yeah, from
It
'84.
wasn't a demo version, really, but still pretty solid, and that was, released much later, of course. There's a really fascinating one that came out first, which was from The Family, 1985. Prince plays all the instruments on that track, pretty much on the whole Family album. It's produced by Paisley Park and one of his many side projects, but different vocalist. So I think it sounds strange. There's a sax solo with a really interesting arrangement on that one. I don't think many have heard that one, and it was just sort of an album cut, I believe, on that record.
Right.
So I don't think the album took off either, like some of these other side projects like Apollonia 6 or
No.
any of those other side shoot kind of projects of his. The one that came out in 1993 on the Hits one, great version, was actually from a performance from January 1992, Prince and the New Power Generation featuring Rosie Gaines.
Yes, I did hear that one.
Most of the times he played it live, it was this sort of fashion where it now the context of the song changes again, and it now becomes a kind of a call and response between two people who have broken up, and they're both missing each other, and so because he'd play it other times with other singers later, he'd play it as a duet, and I always like that kind of version of it. This one with Rosie Gaines, probably my favorite, one I've listened to the most. And there's some funny stuff in there, like she goes, "Went to the doctor, asked what he told me. What he tell you? What he tell me?"
Yeah, I'm gonna listen to that one some more because I only discovered it a couple days ago because I was listening to just the recorded one that came out later. But that one had a lot more energy than the solo. The Prince one that came out later sounded more like a demo.
Yeah, because it was.
Yeah, because it was right,
Yeah.
exactly.
So that's my winner of them all. I think every version, everywhere. I think this is the top one. So check that one out from Prince, 1993, the Hits one, which I believe the Hits one just came out again on vinyl. As the Prince catalog keeps being reproduced on vinyl, so you can grab a copy of that. Then there's another one I found of Prince performing it live in 1990 YouTube clip here, not as a duet, and it is Full Tilt Horny Prince.
Oh wow.
To the point he gets on top of his piano and he sort of does a kind of a push-up humping thing.
Wow, working it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really quite fun, so check that one out too. Okay, so it's okay. So other cover versions of this, I found to be there's not a whole ton. Now, as you know, a lot of these when we talk about cover versions, we're talking about the Beatles songs or something released in the 60s or 70s. So obviously, there's going to be a longer list. This one came out version. The first version obviously in '85, but the big hit in '90. So that's the one that triggers people to do the cover versions. So of the ones I found out there, there's this 1998 Jimmy Scott version. You know Jimmy Scott, Dave?
Is he a reggae or a ska or some? No,
No.
I don't think I know anything
Jimmy
about him.
Scott. Oh, you know Jimmy Scott,
I
Dave. You
do.
don't know that you know him. Jimmy Scott, little Jimmy Scott, as he's called sometimes, is the backup singer on some of the tracks on Lou Reed's 1992 album, Magic and Lost.
Oh,
Is the one
yeah.
with the super high pitched voice. I want all of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Not just some of it, all of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, that's him. Okay.
Yeah. So great jazz singer, and he's a a little tiny guy, so he sounds he has a higher pitched delivery. So the 1998 version from him, pretty good. Stereophonics 2002 version, a real shoulder shrugger for me, that one. 2003, Me First and the Gimme Gimmes.
Great name. Wow.
And more of a punk rock version there. Not a great version from the Motels. The Motels
Oh,
80s band. 2013 might not be the best time
yes.
to catch them. Though, and that was on a collection called the Buddha's Greatest Lounge, so real chilled out, that one. I like this 2014 version, pretty decent peppy jazz version that was on the album. Aretha Franklin sings the great diva classics.
Really?
So,
Oh, I'd like to check that out.
Yeah, check that out. And I was like, diva classics. I'm like, oh, both Sinead and Prince could be
That's true. They're
considered
both divas.
I guess. Different ways.
Yeah.
Hey, I see, of course, you can't see all of Dave's office there, but he has this great Donny Osmond poster just off screen there.
Yes, you can't see it here. Yeah. Yeah.
Donny Osmond, 2014. Actually, this one is a pretty interesting take on it. There's tons of gospel on it, not what you'd expect. So there's
That's not what I would expect.
In the background of this song, all these gospel vocals and stuff like that. So it's actually not the worst thing I've ever heard, which I expected, of course, when I clicked on Donny Osmond. I was like, oh, this is going to be bad, but pleasantly surprised. Also pleasantly surprising, I think the Manfred Mann 2014 instrumental jazz keyboard, beats-driven, cool, loungy, jazzy version. Manfred Mann, of course, has been along forever. And this version, pretty good, I think. 2014 Manfred Mann. We talked, of course, about Blinded by the Light previously on Song Album Career. Dixie Chicks, now just the Chicks. They're 2017. They played a live version, not too bad. Nika Costa, more of a funky version. I like Nika Costa. She had a hit called Like a Feather. I saw her live around sometime in the early 2000s, late 90s. Solid version from her. Of course, probably the third most played, the third most popular, the third best known version of this is from Chris Cornell. Came out in 2018. Posthumous release after his death in 2017. And it was from a Sirius XM performance in 2015. Very good. Of course, leaves you haunted. A couple of others. Lizzie, 2020. Her career has mostly been doing cover versions. So if you want to become familiar with Lizzie, if you like lots of covers. And then Soja. Of course, Dave's really into reggae. So a reggae version on the covers.
It's tough with covers with this one because that's just such a, you identify it with Sinead O'Connor. It's really hard to hear others doing it and not be compared to it.
Exactly. I mean, when it came out, it was a hit and everything, but it wasn't like one of my favorite songs or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I do think, I don't know. It's hard to say. Maybe over time it will fade a little bit in people's memory.
Yeah.
Into not into obscurity, but I'm not sure if it's gonna last 100 years, and it's kind of I question if it has the staying power to compete with some of these other songs we've talked about that are a little bit more legendary. I don't know if Blinded by the Light will be around in 100 years either, but
it's kind of its time. It was right on that edge, 80s to 90s, turning over, and maybe a last gasp of one of those big ballads from the 80s, big power. I mean, not power ballad with guitars, but just kind of a emotional place to sing and let it all loose. I don't know. It was
I would say if you've been dumped, then definitely this is a go-to been dumped
it's a good
song.
one. Yeah,
It's a good one, and you can cry through it. So
yeah, you can feel the pain in her voice.
Exactly. So, okay, well, Dave, it's been great chat. We'll be back, of course, with another song or album or career